Hello, welcome to Power Principles. My name is Peter Mueller and I have produced this video series for you because it contains some valuable lessons for life. The subject of this video is what I call the Power Principle number 1: time is more valuable than money. In order to get this video on YouTube, you simply type in the search engine Dr. Peter Mueller Power Principles, or you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Now, let's get to the subject of time management. When you go to the search engine and you search for time management, you find 6 billion hits. If you ask for time management tools, you still find 3 billion tips. And when you ask for the time management matrix, a tool which we'll be discussing later, you find 220 million hits. Albert Einstein, on the other side, gets only 140 million hits and the Rolling Stones 170, to put it into perspective. I would like to start this segment with some inspirational quotes about time and life. Some Chinese proverbs to start with. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Or, an inch of time is an inch of gold, but you can't buy that inch of time with an inch of gold. And to summarize it in one statement from Earl Nightingale, I really love his very comprehensive quote. Learn to enjoy every minute of your life. Be happy now. Don't wait for something outside of yourself to make you happy in the future. Think how really precious is the time you have to spend, whether it is at work or with your family. Every minute should be enjoyed and savored. Earl Nightingale. Now, let's talk about some irrefutable or indisputable facts of time. Time is the ultimate equalizer. We actually have all the same amount of time, which is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year. We cannot save time, store time, multiply time, or recover any lost time. The only thing we can do with time is simply spend it 1 second at a time. The most important difference between time and money, I explain it the following way. You can spend time or waste time or money only once. However, money you can always recover. Time you cannot recover. Time is like water in a river you watch. Once it passed, it's gone forever. Now, when we look at the time management habits of people around the world, we find that the way people spend their time has a lot to do with their general behavioral patterns. Now, let's take some very common human tendencies when it comes to our ability to choose, to make choices for projects and tasks at work or in private life. We generally tend to choose projects which are easy versus the difficult ones if we have given a choice. Number 2, we choose projects we like versus projects we don't like. And we pick projects which require little time to be completed versus projects which require a lot of time. We choose projects where the resources are readily at hand versus those where we have to go and look to make the resources available. We choose problems where we know how to solve them as opposed to those projects where we don't have the answer ready yet. And we tend to react to demands of others as opposed to acting proactively on our own priorities. And last but not least, the most deadly habit in time management, we tend to choose the urgent tasks over the important tasks. Now, talking about these tendencies of people, which we intuitively follow unless we make purposeful efforts to change them, I call it the 7 habits of highly ineffective people. To make a little joke about it, because you all know in the early 90s, a very successful book from Stephen Covey called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Now, the highly ineffective people, they have a set of habits which I describe like that. They don't set professional and private goals. They don't have a task list written down, that they write down what they actually want to do, that at the beginning of a day they know what they want to accomplish. Number 3, they don't prioritize their projects and tasks. They go to work and take the projects as they come, and it is a kind of random order. Number 4, they don't manage distractions and interruptions. They actually thrive on busy work and distractions. Number 5, they don't focus on the task at hand. They butterfly over the projects and they call it multitasking. Number 6, they don't act on the important first. They procrastinate the important. And number 7, they don't take breaks and relax and recharge their mind in battery because they actually drift during the day with no clear separation between focus and work and concentration and relaxation. Now, everybody is talking about at work that people are wasting their time and wasting energy and so forth. And here is my short list of the 7 classic time wasters we can find everywhere. The number 1 in the business world are the distractions and interruptions. When you're in the office, people are coming in, or the phone rings, or you get email notifications. And in our days, the cell phone is the absolute time killer, because with all the notifications coming in, and the phone calls, and the emails, and the Snapchat, and the texts, and the Facebook exchanges, and so forth, they take all the time away if we don't pay attention to it and develop proactive strategies. Secondly, the most common reason for wasted time is disorganization. Physical and mental. Offices are not organized, hard disks have no structure, people cannot find emails, they go through piles of paper and never find the documents they are looking for. Number 3, data, information overload. In our days, everybody receiving 300 plus emails a day, tons of papers, advertising floating on the desk. It goes on and on and on. Number 4, meetings. Particularly in larger organizations, meetings are a waste of time in many cases, because many people go to meetings just to sit in and to listen, basically. They don't have a contribution to make, but it feels good to sit with a group of people and chit-chat a little bit about what's going on. Number 5, travel, business travel. When you think about it, very frequently we travel from one city to the next one. We have about 8 to 10 hours travel time, but we have only a 1 or 2 hour meeting. So this is a big potential time waster. Number 6, procrastination. And it is simply the lack of focus and the lack of mental discipline. The really important things are moved away because they cannot solved quickly and easily, because we follow this human tendency of the quick and dirty approach to solving problems. And last but not least, time waster number 7, the urgency addiction. I need to say only one thing: watch what people do with their cell phones and how often they use it, and how much it really contributes to value creation in significant problems and value creation. I talked about here right now about the two most important dimensions of effectiveness, the urgency or the importance. And for importance, we simply consult the dictionary. And for importance, it says simply something is important, something is of great consequence. It is significant, it is vital. As opposed to the urgent, urgent are many things which prompt an immediate reaction from us, regardless of whether it is of great consequence or little or no consequence. And seldom are the important things really urgent, because urgent things are really truly crisis. You know it, for example, when you are exams, you cannot move the day of the exams. You have to walk in whether you are prepared or not. Or when it is April 14th, it doesn't help. On April 15th, you have to file your tax return. Or one day before your wedding anniversary, if you don't have a gift for your wife, you better get in gear because the date does not move. So, that was a brief idea on what's important and how urgency comes in, what is truly a crisis, because when things are important and you cannot move the timeline, then you go into crisis mode, because you definitely have to achieve something. If you do not achieve it, it is of great negative consequence. Actually, one of the tests for me is, if I want to make sure if I'm working on the right thing, I'm simply asking myself, what happens if I don't do this thing at all? What are the negative consequences or little consequences? And we will find out very often that many of the things we immediately, as a knee-jerk reaction, try to do immediately, but they are actually not important at all. They are just urgent. Now, when we look at the dimensions of urgency and importance, there are actually 4 buckets we can put in it. If we make a coordinate system where we start at the bottom at low and we go upwards to high, and we start on the horizontal axis from high and we go to low, we have quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4 as you see on the chart. So quadrant 1 is true crisis. It is urgent and important. Number 2, it is very important, but it is not urgent. And that is the big problem quadrant for many, many people. Because important things are being procrastinated until they become urgent, and then it is crisis. And then people have stress and freak out. Number 3, this is the deadly quadrant. The urgent quadrant, but not important, where all the distractions and the little tiny things are coming. The cell phones, the next SMS, another email, another piece of mail, another Snapchat, the other phone call, whatever. And number 4, we all know it when we are in it, the not important and the not urgent. This is Monday morning quarterbacking on the cooler or on the coffee machine. Now, when we look at a typical week in the office and look at the 4 quadrants, we can see here the urgent and important. It is when we truly have a crisis, when we have major projects which have deadlines we cannot move, when you, for example, booked your 2 weeks vacation and you are 2 days prior the takeoff date for the flight, you better get packed and organized. Otherwise, the consequences are pretty heavy financially if you miss your flight. And on the day, it is truly crisis 1. If you miss your flight, everything else might fall apart. Quadrant 2 This is the quadrant which is often ignored. This is where the major projects are, which are of longer term consequences. These relate to your objectives and goals you agreed with your boss at work. These are the major things, but when we look at it, it requires planning, it requires setting priorities. Learning belongs into this category because you have to always update your skill set and your knowledge to be ready for the next job and to stay on top of current technologies. These are preparation and the working on longer term projects. This belongs into this quadrant. Quadrant 3, the deadly one, I refer to it, the cell phone, the email, the useless meetings, you know it. And we just need to pay attention to this. Quadrant 4, we talked about it. Whenever you are in it, get out of there. Now, there is a very simple strategy. Once we have identified where our activities go in a kind of a time log, that we know where we spend our time, then we can put them into quadrant 1, quadrant 2, 3, and 4. And I would highly recommend that you go, and we talk later about it, that you make a 1-week time log and put your activities into the 4 quadrants. And here is one of the big problems. In our daily activities, we tend to treat a lot of number 3, quadrant 3 activities like they were number 1s. And that's where the perceived stress comes in and people say, I don't have the time to do this, and so forth. But this is the problem. The quadrant 3 is the problem. And whenever we find ourselves in quadrant 3, the right way to go is moving into quadrant 2. Because the more we work on quadrant 2, the less we have true quadrant 1 crisis. And that is the key strategy to remember. But the first thing we have to do, we have to understand where our time goes, and a time log is one of the key tools we should use to understand where our time goes. And when you say, oh, I know where my time goes, no, you don't, unless you have done a time log. Now, to summarize it here, if you want to make a 10-step program to improve your time management and self-management, then here are the 10 steps. And before we go to the 10 steps, time management for me is also life management. It is self-management, which requires self-discipline, mental discipline, and focus. Number 1, recognize that time is our most valuable resource, and we have to make a commitment to drastically improve our time management. Number 2, make a 1-week time log and start now. In essence, an easy way to do this, you simply take the recording function of your telephone, and whenever you go from one task to the next, briefly record on your phone what you are doing and record the time. And in the evening, you simply you look at your voice messages you basically sent to yourself and look how you went from one job to the next and what you actually did, and then categorize them in which quadrant they fall. And then you will see, and you will be surprised on how much time you spend on quadrants 3 and 4. Number 3, analyze your time spending patterns by performing a time log using the quadrant system, which I just explained very briefly. Number 4, as a new habit, leave quadrant 3 immediately when you catch yourself in it and move to quadrant 2. Number 5, create short and long-term goals for your professional life as well as your private life and assign them in the quadrants 1 and 2. Number 6, assign proactively each day 1 or 2 quadrant 2 goals and reserve the first hour of work for them and execute accordingly. The first hour in the morning, not getting a coffee, getting to the desk and reading emails. This is not the way to start. Getting the coffee, yes. The first thing in the office doing is not reading the emails. It is the first hour working on a quadrant 2 activity, on an important task and project which is not yet urgent. Number 7. Have every evening a brief review and set goals for the next day. Make a small post-it note. 2 little things you have to accomplish next day and the 1 magic hour in your quadrant 2. What you want to accomplish. To which major project your activities relate to. Number 8. Before leaving the house every morning, briefly review your daily goals and tasks and read them to yourself. Take briefly a note before you go to the car. This is what I'm going to do. And when I come back and park the car in the garage, and hopefully I can check off my activity lists that I have accomplished it. Number 9, design your day proactively to avoid distractions and interruptions. So in other words, block certain hours in a given day and say, from 3 to 4 I'm doing this, from 8 to 9 I'm doing this, and then let the rest of the day unfold, because if you don't block these days away, these hours away, they will be taken away. By the way, there will be soon coming a power principle number 3, which is called the power of focus, where we talk about how to deal with distractions and talking about more about focus. And last but not least, step number 10, condition your new time management habits until they become an integral part of your new character. On that note, have fun and enjoy the ride, and hopefully seeing you for power principle number 2.